So I don't want to sort of rob the audience of the ability to do a Q&A with you. So just a couple more questions. One, how do you get inspired?
I mean, I think it's all kinds of things. I think in general we have this principle that the world is already interesting enough. So in each and every design problem or like project where you have to intervene in some way or the other, there is already in the brief or in the politics around the project or in the context or in the ingredients are already there. Mm-hmm. All you have to find out is which ones are the critical ones, which is the greatest problem or the greatest potential. And then once you try to sort of benchmarking against these different factors, suddenly something interesting will reveal itself. And then I think just like as I've gotten older, I used to, when I was younger, always go on holidays to cities. But I think now when I have holidays, I go as far into nature as possible. It's like very old-fashioned. But I think in that sense also like just like last summer, me and some of my colleagues and some of my friends climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and we didn't have signal for 9 days. And it was like sort of like insanely inspiring to like eliminate noise for a while. And it sounds like this sort of conventional wisdom, and maybe it is.
Yeah. What are you certain of?
That it's a Schopenhauer quote, but I think it's the fundamental fact of life as a human being is you can do what you want, but you cannot want what you want. Which essentially means if you want something, you can act on it or not. So you actually have the power to do what you want, or at least try to do what you want. But you cannot decide what you want, because the truth is in you. Either you want it or you don't.
Well, the act of wanting is not sort of fruitful.
It's not what?
Fruitful. Like, you can't just want it. You have to do something about it.
No, but it's even more that it's down to like you can analyze with your head. You can even like put out options in your head. And I think a lot of the misery and a lot of films are about this, that people have somehow decided for a life that they wanted, but it wasn't what they wanted.
Right.
Because you cannot want what you want. Either you want it or you don't. And I think it's like you have to chew on it. It's an aphorism, so you have to chew on it. But it's a bit like falling in love. Either you love the girl or you don't. And if you don't, there's nothing you can do about it. It's never going to work.
Great. I'm sure that everyone's going to walk away with that one.
It's Schopenhauer. Right. I know that he elaborates more on it. But I think it's a fundamental fact of life.
I'm going to chew on that one.
Think with your head, decide with your heart.
Okay. So last question. If I'm going to fast forward you X amount of years out there, what legacy would you like to leave?
I would love to leave behind a handful of buildings, at the very least. Also, like one thing we're thinking about, but it's more like a mental exercise. So I think Le Corbusier, his last essay was, nothing is transmissible but the thought or the idea. I don't know how it's translated. Rien transmissible que le penser, I think it is in French. But that somehow eventually all your buildings might get torn down. But it's the ideas that you pass on that actually have an everlasting and massive impact and contribute to this ongoing evolution of for human beings to create the world a better place to live. And I think, of course, now that we have gone through this process, that we are now 170 people, which make us more capable of doing things that we weren't able to take on previously, you also start thinking more about to what extent can, and I think quite often architects worry about the afterlife of their office so late in life that it's too late. And I think there is something interesting, at least just playing with the idea. And I think we started so early, and I plan to stay around for a while longer. I quit smoking before I turned 30 for that reason.
Good for you.
That extends your life expectancy with 11 years compared to not quitting. But still, this idea of like, to what extent can an office really become a culture where it totally doesn't matter who's involved in the project,
right,
as long as the right sort of combination of competences are put together. So you would never be able to see which one of the partners was involved or not.
Right.
So like, because like in general, offices where the names of the founding partners are the name of the office, but where those founding partners are either dead or retired, somehow lose a little bit of their magic. And it could be amazing if you could actually, because I honestly think that in my opinion, our work has gotten better and better and better and better. Sort of inverse proportion with the amount of time that I personally spent on each project. So like in an ideal world, when my involvement moves towards zero,
the work's
that the
really
quality
good.
moves towards infinity. But at least there's like some kind of interesting thing there. But I mean, the honest answer is really that it would be fantastic to leave behind a handful of buildings.
Oh. Well, it's, I could sit here and we could talk for hours. And
The amazing thing also, do you know what makes a building last long?
No, what?
Is if people love it, they maintain it, and it's going to stay around forever. It's very simple.
Yeah.
Because like buildings are a little bit like the human body. Like they say that you become what you eat. So like in 5 years, every single cell in your body has been replaced with some of the stuff you put in your mouth.
That's frightening.
It's a scary thought. And it's the same with the building. Eventually, you'll replace every single part of it. But you'll do it gradually. Like you'll actually take care of the building if you like it, and you'll like it if it actually fits your needs, if it's
Right.
capable of adapting to your needs. But if people hate it, it's going to get torn down or it's going to fall apart. So if you make buildings that people love so badly, then they'll keep taking care of them and they will last forever.
Right. Absolutely great point. So you ready to open it up to the audience? Thank you. So we have a couple of mics that can be passed around. So
Hello. First of all, I absolutely love the parfait part of the segment. That was actually pretty fun.
I'm glad that you could take that home with you.
Yes, I will, and I will catch up on my Shrek movies while I'm at it. What I was looking at was, I thought was really interesting was I was noticing your body reaction as well as what you were saying when the discussion came of BIM. And as you know, mainly the one BIM software that's being used now is Revit. And that's always been a discussion, which is BIM is kind of becoming the new AutoCAD. Not only is it better from a 3D standpoint, but it's also good when you put it in front of clientele. However, I also thought about the word you said, which was primitive. And I think that's interesting because in the 9 years that I've used it, that's always been one of the big debates is Revit BIM in particular good with designs? And so I guess my question is to you. It's my understanding your office is using a BIM software, but you're kind of concerned, I think you were saying you're concerned with the banal designs that can come of it. Do you see your office trying to push the envelope for creating interesting designs out of BIM, or do you just figure, you'll just kind of join a lot of the architects and just play telephone room with Grasshopper?
I mean, in all honesty, I'm not the best person in our organization to answer this question. The guy in front of you would be better at answering the question, actually. It's Thomas Christoffersen, my partner here in New York office. But maybe I just like we are actually again jumping on the Revit wagon with a project where we have good reasons to believe that the nature of the architecture is more suited for BIM. The previous times we did it, we ended up figuring out that because certain things, and maybe Revit also evolved, but that certain of the things, like certain of the automated things that comes with the idea of trying to wedge as much information into the actual act of modeling, just gave you certain limitations that in the end it didn't work out. We tried to do the Danish pavilion in Shanghai, and there was not a straight line in that goddamn building. There was not a flat floor. Like everything was a nightmare. And then in the end, the steel contractor that did the building, they printed out our two-dimensional sections on big sheets of paper, and we were like working with sort of like a 1/16 of an inch tolerances. Then they transferred the two-dimensional drawings onto the steel sheets with chalk. That was more like an inch. And then they cut it by hand. And then they fit everything with a big hammer. But the building got built. But I think now, like we're trying again. I mean, and I think maybe the software needed to evolve, and maybe there's like ways to, and maybe we're willing to give it another go. And we would love to like capture on some of all of the efficiencies that are heralded by the Revit salespeople. Are you a Revit salesperson? So I, like maybe in 6 months we can say something informed about it.
Okay. Another question here.
I'm under the impression that you don't do a lot of private houses, and I wondered if there was a reason.
We would love to design your private house. It's actually like a dream project to do. Somehow, I think we just got involved in multifamily housing, for instance, and like larger projects. And then I think because we named our office BIG, everybody thinks that. But we would love to do a sort of James Bond villain's lair style house for you. Actually, two of my colleagues, Thomas and Doug, are going to Mexico City this weekend to visit the site of our first private house. So maybe we can undo the curse.
Hi.
Question.
Hi. Hi. Thank you, Bjarke, for this talk. And I have been following you and your work since like 10 years ago, and then I almost became an intern in your office, new office 2 years ago, but because of the visa problem. So anyway, the question is.
Sorry.
Yeah. The question is.
We missed you.
we know you have worked for OMA for Ram Cross, right? And then there are quite a lot of plenty of architects after working with him for OMA and then end up having their own practice. But I mean, you kind of stand out from the others so easily, and then right now you are competing with Ram Cross directly for the Miami project. So I want to know, like, is there any kind of thing that make you, or do you have like a different business kind of strategy or something to kind of make you different from the other kind of OMA bred architects? Thank you.
While I think I'll say something else. You were just mentioning, actually, we are, in fact, competing with OMA in Miami Beach right now. But it's actually, we are working for a developer, Portman, who is competing with another developer, Tishman. And I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign that I'm having a conversation in the Tishman auditorium. It's probably a good sign. I think I don't know to what extent that we've done things different or not from some of the other architects. I know a lot of the architects, and the funny thing is when I was at OMA, like that generation, a lot of them have their respective offices right now. I'm not sure, like, now we definitely take the business of having an architecture quite serious. From my point of view, it's like the more successful the business is, the more I would have to personally be involved in it. Because like when the business was like monumentally unsuccessful, I spent all my time on it. And of course, like so we're not doing architecture to be profitable, but we are profitable so that we can do architecture. And I think at some point, especially when we started big, I was from the beginning conscious that I wanted to really organize the company or to consider the design of the office a design project on its own. Just because, you know, you can easily obsess about each and every project, sort of insanely, but then, you know, you don't give a shit about how you run your own office. So I think maybe we've been conscious about, that's why, you know, I started instantly getting a CFO. And then when we found the right one, so we have sort of been building that part. And then also, like, maybe an interesting anecdote, maybe the way we also try to approach it is that we're definitely colleagues in the field of architecture. So we are actually quite open about sharing information with other architecture offices. And like a lot of them are also open the other way around. And I think an anecdote that I find kind of interesting is that we're doing a project in Basel. It was a competition in this former sort of industrial area that's turning into part of the Art Basel Fair, the Volta Fair for like younger galleries is there, and the art school is moving there and already moved there, and like so there's a lot of things going on, and we're doing a big project there. And one of the chairman of the jury in the competition was Christine Binschwanger, one of the partners of Herzog de Meuron. She gave me a tour of Herzog de Meuron after the announcement. And then I spoke with Sheila afterwards, and I said, you know, like Herzog de Meuron, they're like an incredibly admirable office. They have like a really good atmosphere, like they're incredibly well structured. They've always been based in Basel. They're like 350 people, and they keep doing like more and more sort of technically and aesthetically challenging work, and it's always flawlessly executed. Maybe with the exception of the bird's nest, but I hadn't seen it up close yet at that time. So I said to Sheila, like, maybe you could find out how they're organized as a company. And then Sheila started looking into it, and she couldn't find any like really relevant information. So she called up the CEO or like the business manager of Hertog and said, my name is Sheila Søgaard. I'm calling from Big in Copenhagen. We're like great admirers of your work, and we have a project in your city. So I'm coming down for a contract negotiation. I would love to share information to whatever extent you want. So I'll tell you about Big, and in exchange you tell us about the Hertog. And he said yes. And then they had or she did, I'm not sure. And then they had a great exchange of information. And we got a little bit smarter, and they got a little bit smarter. So I think in that sense, but maybe the other OMA offices do it also. I mean, I also like to believe that that the reason that we're doing good is because of the work we do. But of course, it's a combination of a lot of different factors.
You know, that's what I believe is missing in our community, and what I attempt to do every day, which is build that community so that we can share information like that. Because there's plenty of work for everybody, and the more we get on each other about the way we work and the way we share, the better we all get. Should we take a couple more questions?
Hello. Thanks again for the conference. This is actually funny following up the last question, because it's also a little bit of a reference to REM, and you mentioned Corbusier as well. And it's more about media. And some people have compared you to Corb and REM in the way they've used media, and they've been able to sort of create a brand and not only produce work, but actually communicate their work, which is an important part of architecture, communication. But I've also noticed a shift, whereas Corb and REM deal with a lot with writing. Your first publication was actually more of a comic. So it basically goes back to the more graphic nature in media. I would just like you to comment more about that. How does your company use media? How have you used media, and this shift from written word to more mixed contemporary language?
I mean, I think also like the reason that Yes is More was a graphic novel, or was like modeled, it was actually modeled on an American graphic novel. I think it's a lot of things, but at that point we hadn't really published like any monograph, and I had been lecturing quite a bit for quite a while, so there was a lot of discourse, but it was like, and of course we had written a lot of text that accompanied the projects, but it hadn't really been published in any way. And I was thinking there was like this whole oral tradition that we somehow needed to get down in writing. And the thinking was really like, what if you could simply type out a lecture on Post-its and stick the Post-its on the slides, so that basically the Post-it says what you say when you show the slide. And the dummy for that, Kenaoki, this Japanese intern, did the first dummy, and it was like a stack that made SML Excel look like a pamphlet. So we thought we had to rethink it. And then we realized that the graphic novel is essentially the combination of words and images, where the graphic layout can actually channel also the reading speed and the information density, etc. The interesting thing is that Yes is More is actually a very text-heavy book, much more text-heavy than a typical architecture book. And I think it's one of the few architecture books where you actually read the text. Because somehow word and image is combined as it is in a graphic novel. And I know from the museums that have had the show, the exhibition, which was like a long sort of Parthenon frieze of the wall-mounted comic book backlit with all the models distributed around it, is that they said that the typical visitor ended up spending like typically 1 to 2 hours in the exhibition, whereas normally that would be like half or like a quarter of that. So that people somehow got sucked into reading the comics on the wall and like looking at the models and like, because you start by like reading one statement and then so that there's something. So I think in the end it was a little bit like of a discovery. We tried to translate the oral knowledge and narrative that already existed from the lectures into a book form. And then in doing that, we adapted to the already established sort of literary convention of the comic book. But I think it is. I mean, I very much admire both Rem Koolhaas and Le Corbusier, not least for their. I think they both understood that if you want a place in the history books, you better write it yourself. But I also think that for architects, and if you want to create a culture rather than having some colleagues or employees carry out your own sketches, but you really want to sort of create a culture of sort of independently thinking, analyzing, and designing collaborators, you have to be incredibly skilled at communicating. My old Danish teacher said that if you don't write clearly, it's because you don't think clearly. And I think that's very true, that there's a certain editing exercise in taking the effort to communicate ideas very clearly, both in the analysis and the design process and in the end in the communication process.
So Bjarke, I think we need to wrap it up.
I am, but then I actually think, so while I was talking about thinking clearly and speaking clearly, like I'm sort of, you got to wrap it up, man. Like, it makes no sense. No, but so I just think that maybe more than anything, communication is as much a design tool as it is a sort of an after-the-fact sort of communication tool.
Okay. Thank you.